The Beckwith Ranch is a historic cattle ranch here in the Wet Mountain Valley of Custer County, Colorado. It was originally established by Elton and Edwin Beckwith, two brothers from Mount Desert Island, Maine, in 1869. They built it into one of the largest cattle ranches in Colorado from 1869 to 1907. Paul and Phyllis Seegers donated the headquarters and main buildings to the Friends of Beckwith Ranch Incorporated in 1997. The headquarters include over 11 buildings, 10 of which were listed on the National Register of Historic Places on May 20, 1998. It has been restored to its heyday and is now an icon in the valley once again. The buildings are furnished and maintained by the Friends of Beckwith Ranch organization, a 501c3 nonprofit. Your donations will be used to maintain and preserve this beautiful historic site. When you first approach the mansion, you pass by two smaller cottages that are what is left of three cottages built to be guest houses. The guest house to the left has been repurposed to be a restroom for use by guests of weddings and public events. Elton Beckwith was a Colorado senator from 1886 to 1888. Elton and his family lived in Denver during his one term and made many important friends. After they moved back to the valley, they hosted elaborate parties, inviting their friends to come and stay on the ranch. Elsie Beckwith traveled extensively and brought back furnishings and items to not only decorate the mansion, but also the guest houses. To your right, the extended porch-like appendage to the main house is called a porte cochere. Guests from Denver would be picked up at the Beckwith's private railway platform just west of the mansion on the Denver and Rio Grande Railway and brought back to unload under the porte cochere. Bands often set up atop the porte cochere to play and entertain guests. This mansion had humble beginnings as a one-room log cabin built in 1871, right after Elton Beckwith sold his flour and grain business in Philadelphia and joined his brother Edwin here in the valley. Just down the hill, Charles Goodnight had established a ranch on the west side of Pueblo along the Arkansas River and was stocking it by driving cattle up from Texas to sell to ranchers in the surrounding area, including the Beckwiths. When rich silver ore was discovered at Rosita in 1871, the Beckwith brothers were poised to take advantage of the thousands of prospector migrants who followed, and the Beckwiths began building their cattle empire. By 1899, the Beckwiths had increased their herd to 7,000 cattle and had 200 horses, including some of the finest racehorses in Colorado, and had acquired 6,000 acres. In today's dollars, they were valued at $50 million. This was before barbed wire fencing, so cattle roamed on the open range, consisting of thousands of unfenced, mostly government acres. In 1875, Elton married Elsie Chapin Davis, a widow living in the valley and owner of the Half Circle D Ranch near Ulay. After the marriage, things began to change at the ranch, and in particular at the main house. The original one-room cabin was enlarged room by room until it became the Beckwith Mansion. The first floor hosts a front parlor, a back parlor, studying, dining room, kitchen, scullery, and larder. Upstairs includes a master bedroom, a second bedroom, maid's quarters, and what was probably a bathing room. This home was the first in Custer County to have electricity, telephone, and indoor plumbing. The Beckwith Empire in the Wet Mountain Valley was short-lived. Edwin died in 1899 at the age of 50, only 30 years after moving into the valley. His brother Elton spent the last years of his life suffering from paresis and was confined to the second floor of the mansion. He fell, or possibly jumped out of a second-floor window in 1907, resulting in his death a week later. He was 60 years old. Elsie sold the ranch and moved to Denver to live out her remaining years in luxury at the Brown Palace Hotel. She died in 1931 and is buried with Elton and Edwin in the Ulay Cemetery, 3 miles south of the mansion. They had one daughter, Velma. Next to the main house to the west is the ice house. In the winter, ice was cut into blocks out of frozen streams and lakes in the area. The blocks will be stored in the insulated ice house and packed with straw and/or sawdust to keep them cool. Inside the mansion, the larder room was an ice box. The ice blocks were carried inside to the ice box where food and dairy could be kept cool and preserved. This ice house would hold enough ice to last through the summer until it could be replenished in the winter. The bunkhouse is where the ranch hands, cowboys, and wranglers lived while working the ranch. In the late 19th century, most cowboys were young single men. With 7,000 head of cattle grazing on the open range without fences, the cowboys would have to camp with the herds most of the time. Wranglers and other ranch hands would have resided in the bunkhouse full time. The standard bunkhouse during this period was a large open room with narrow beds, cots, or bunk beds, heated with a fireplace. The bunkhouse provided little privacy for the occupants. The typical hands ate in the kitchen and the main house. Look to your left. The small structure along the back fence is the two-hole outhouse or privy. The small building or shed in the northwest corner of the compound was a blacksmith and workshop. To keep up with the demand to shoe horses, repair bridles, and damage hardware, a ranch the size of Beckwith required a fully equipped workshop and blacksmithing facility. Next, to the east, was the tack building and carriage house, where saddles, bridles, and other tack were housed. Note the large double doors that would enable the storage of buggies and carriages. Implements, coaches, buggies, wagons, etc. were operated with horsepower. This horse barn housed horses, each confined to its own stall. Hay and feed was stored in the loft above. The side shed attachments housed wagons, carriages, and tack. This large barn was the Beckwith Cattle and Dairy Barn. Milk cows provided milk, cream, and cheese to the Beckwith family and ranch hands. Most ranchers could provide their own cheese and milk, but nearby mining operations provided a market for some ranchers to increase production and to even build cheese factories to supply the towns of Rosita, Quarita, Silvercliff, and Westcliff during the mining years. Hay and grain was stored in the loft. Attached to the horse and dairy barns was a corral where horses were broken and cattle branded. The Beckwiths were accused of branding calves from the other herds, something easily accomplished with an open range grazing. We hope you will help us preserve this historic ranch headquarters facility for another 150 years. Donations are appreciated and can be made online at www.beckwithranch.com or to the secure red roofed box next to the informational sign out front. Because Friends of Beckwith Ranch is a registered 501c3 organization, donations are tax deductible.